morning, everybody. Whether my slides are visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. At the outset, let me express my gratitude to my mentor, Professor P. Nagbhushan sir, and Professor Karsitappa sir, and my friends Subhas Kulkarni, Basavaraj Ghadge, Shubhangi madam, Shambhulinga sir, and the entire the FDP team comprising of members from VTU and also members from IIIT Allahabad. My co-panelist Subbareddy sir and Ujjayant Singh sir and Dr. Javed. I'll take just 10 minutes because I have been allocated 10 minutes. Why mathematics is important in computer science. We all know that computer science and engineering is comprising of two areas, computer science and computer engineering. Computer science is dominated by mathematicians and computer engineering is dominated by electronics engineers. In computer science, mathematics is the foundation. Every earlier speakers, they also said that mathematics is very much essential for the students of computer science. More so is the discrete mathematical structures. With discrete mathematical structures stress on finite nature inherent to many problems prevailing in the real world. Computer memory, computer secondary memory, primary memory are finite in nature. Then when you look at the various structures like data structures, theory of computer languages, then when you look at analysis of algorithms, wherein we use the structures or the concepts drawn from discrete mathematics. Discrete mathematics is also useful in the area of social sciences and also in statistics. Computer is the entity of mathematicians, what earlier Alan Turing said, and here I have just given the photograph of great mathematician Alan Turing. Under his name, we have the highest award in computer science called the Turing Award. Coming to the various aspects of discrete mathematics, we start with the logical notations, the area called logics, set theory, combinatorics, combinatorial mathematics, what we call graph theory, probability, number theory, algebra, relations, mathematical induction, recurrence relations, fast-state machines, compiler design, the things continue. In all these aspects, we take the support of discrete mathematics. When you teach discrete mathematics, it is very essential for us to give the real-world applications. For example, Boolean algebra. Boolean algebra is used in logic gates. Relational algebra is used in database management systems. Number theory is used in cryptography and cryptic analysis. And mathematical induction is used in theorem proving. Wherever the analytical proving becomes cumbersome, tedious, then we invariably go for mathematical induction for proving the theorems. And we find statistics in the big data. Again, when we talk about computer science, we always say about certain myths in computer science. For example, when I entered into computer science way back in 1984, people had an illusion, people had an concept called no mathematics is necessary to study computer science. And the first batch of computer science students were doing mostly with the programming, sitting with the personal computers. Therefore, their counter friends of different departments, namely electrical, mechanical, and civil, they used to say that computer science is nothing but programming or coding, or computer science mainly is the study of languages, but languages are no doubt important. Today we find a lot of shift in the industry. There's a paradigm shift from service industry to the product industry, and especially to survive in the product industry, we need to have a good understanding of the basics of computer science, especially the foundations of mathematics or discrete mathematical structures. Therefore, the earlier myth, which was that no mathematics is required for computer science, stands false today in the present scenario. More so, no good research in computer science is possible without the foundations of mathematics. No one can have good publications in the journals. Again, many of the friends like Dr. Guru and even my own professor Nagbhushan sir, they talk about algorithms, and they are very much good at teaching algorithms. The word algorithm is derived from the greatest or the well-known mathematician, Persian mathematician called Abu Jafar ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi, and with his name, it is assumed that the word algorithm has been derived. Mathematics teaches the usage of algorithms. The very BODMAS, what we study in our school days, is the best example for the algorithm. It is a research area in computer science. And when you look at the whole word is algorithmic in nature. Dawn to dusk, we knowingly or unknowingly follow algorithms in every task being carried out. Algorithm analysis in terms of time and space complexity requires thorough understanding of mathematics, which looks funny at present because of the development in hardware. Word allows good solutions, not optimal solutions. When you look at the other areas of computer science, we can name many areas wherein we find the application of mathematics. Networking, for that matter, artificial intelligence, embedded systems, data analytics, cloud computing, distributed computing, that's what we call today edge computing, network protocol design. Network protocol design requires the knowledge of formal grammar. Data analytics requires the thorough knowledge of statistics. Graph theory knowledge is required in networking. Artificial intelligence and machine learning require a thorough knowledge of mathematical concepts like linear algebra, multivariate calculus, probability theory, etc. When you look at the machine learning, vectors, vectorization, again, regression, different types of regression techniques, linear, logistic, polynomial regression, many sorts of regression techniques we use. And especially in decision making, we use decision trees, Bayesian networks, and as far as artificial neural networks are concerned, we use shallow and deep networks. When you talk about artificial neural networks, we talk about learning algorithms. Popular ones are backpropagation, delta learning. And when you talk about the deep neural networks, we talk about the activation functions, then convolution layers, etc. When you look at all this, we find the knowledge of mathematics. It is very, very essential. Without mathematics, survival becomes very difficult, especially in machine learning. When you look at the partial differentiation, like we use Jacobian, first order derivatives, Hessian, and we talk about loss and cost functions. We talk about underfit, overfit, and we talk about regularization. So many aspects of mathematics we make use of in the study of computer science. When you look at the very area, artificial intelligence, what artificial intelligence we talked in the 1980s is totally different from what we see today. And AI is the superset of ML, and ML is the superset of DL. What is called experience for human beings, it is the huge data for the machine. Then how to teach discrete mathematics? Math should not be taught in an abstract way. Teach the applications by taking real-world examples. Here, I would like to quote the example given by our professor, Nagbhushan sir, how we used to multiply the two integers in the high school days. To develop an algorithm to do that, it needs an innovation. And the student cannot copy straight away the things from the net. Therefore, maths should be taught not in an abstract way, but with real-world examples. Maths should contain more of tutorials, group assignments. And group assignments and tutorials are very advantageous in teaching mathematics, where the students will have hands-on experience and teachers will monitor how the students solve the examples which are given to them. And it is always better to take the groups and assign them the exercise problems given at the end of the chapter. So entire class can solve the exercise problems and make a solution manual ready for their ready reckoning. One can use the simulation tools to illustrate the concepts, the various concepts of discrete mathematics, and also we can use the concepts, how the concepts differ from one another. We can illustrate how sets are different from sequences. See, when I ask my own students the definition of an algorithm, they say simply the step-by-step execution of instructions. Why not say the sequence of instructions to be executed in order to perform a task? And again, when we talk about the definition of a data structure, nobody tells me the definition which Dr. Guru gave yesterday. Everybody tells it's an organized collection of the data. Nobody tells that it's a three-tuple. It consists of representation, it consists of functions, and it consists of the axioms governing the particular data structure. So it's as a teacher, I need to convince how each of the concepts used in computer science. It's very, very essential. And one more thing I would like to stress upon here, mathematics requires continuous practice. Practice does not make one perfect, but perfect practice makes one perfect. Encourage tutorials in discrete mathematical structures teaching. Encourage seminars in discrete mathematical structures teaching. Most of us do not know who have all contributed to the domain of discrete mathematics. We don't know who is the person who proposed set theory, Cantor. The name of a scientist called Cantor, we don't know. That's the reason why always as a teacher, I must tell beyond what is being said in the syllabus. Many times, concept-wise assessment becomes necessary in discrete mathematical structures evaluation. End-sem examination must have least importance. Everything has to be covered in continuous internal evaluation, wherein you will come in direct contact with the students. Therefore, you will understand how much learning has happened in the student. Discrete mathematical structures often end up in distal evaluation. Especially, it cannot be partially true. Therefore, we always talk that it has to be 0 or 1. I should get full marks or I should get 0 marks. The results are important, unlike the continuum mathematics. Have questions on applications and concepts need to be assessed by the teacher. With this, I would like to conclude my presentation. Present boom in artificial intelligence and its subsets, namely machine learning and deep learning, which have made not only DMS important, but also other areas of mathematics important. Research in computer science with a strong mathematics foundation becomes very good when you are doing research and when you are publishing papers of high value, and you can have the publications in peer-reviewed journals. Job opportunities increase with good exposure to mathematics. because today we have many jobs in the field of data science and also in the field of machine learning. As it is rightly said by many speakers who spoke on this total FDP on different days, namely Venkatesh Murthy sir, then Nagbhushan sir, Subhas Kulkarni sir, and Dr. Guru. They all spoke about the importance of mathematics in computer science. I endorse whatever they have said in their presentations. I appeal to all the teachers present here to do not let your CS students shy away from mathematics. You love mathematics and make your students love too. Thank you. Thank you for giving me an opportunity.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay. We are actually we are happy to learn from you that experience means a huge data for machines, and you also have highlighted that we have to stress, as being a teacher, we have to stress more on practical assignments and all those things. So I thank you once again for highlighting the mathematical aspects of computer science to different applications, and also giving us pointers for teaching, learning, and assessment in a more effective way. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Learning does not happen all at once, but it builds upon and is shaped by the previous knowledge. Both humans as well as machine learning generate knowledge, one residing in the brain, the other residing in the machine. So in today's tech-savvy world, machine learning is a buzzword and the most popular course sought in the academia and industry. Now I request Professor Subba Reddy sir to share his philosophical thoughts on teaching learning with machines, which is entitled Best Practices in Machine Learning, Teaching, Learning and Assessment. Over to you, sir.
Dr. Javed?
Yes, sir, it's visible, sir.
Visible, okay, thank you. Good morning to all the dignitaries of IIIT Allahabad and PTU Belgaum. At the outset, I would like to thank Dr. P. Nagbhushan, sir, and Dr. Karisi Thappa, Vice Chancellor VTU, and their team for giving me an opportunity to be here and participate in the deliberations. Because time is limited, I will optimize my presentation, starting with the evolution of artificial intelligence. So in this particular slide, we see how machine learning and deep learning evolved from artificial intelligence. So Basavaraja Anami sir rightly said that machine learning is subset of artificial intelligence and deep learning is subset of machine learning. So I would like to recall my memory some 36 years back. In the year 1994, when I met Dr. P. Nagbhushan. He was around 35, 36 years old, youngest professor in Karnataka in computer science, maybe in India in computer science and engineering. So he just gave me a paper to go through it, entitled Machine Learning Models by Lippmann, a survey paper. So that is where journey of my research started. And he guided me, nurtured me, and because of his blessings, now I am here in your presence and giving this presentation. If you carefully see this slide, in artificial intelligence, so you are seeing neurons component, right? In intelligent system, so neurons component is one of the components of an intelligent system, that is machine learning component. In the next diagram, so this is the block diagram of an intelligent computing system. And here you are seeing the machine learning subject. Machine learning subject of the system is one of the components. So which involves study of many learning models. The key objective of learning models is learning models automatically generate knowledge for problem solving. So here I would like to present some issues which I practice in my teaching activities, especially in machine learning subject. So please don't consider best practices in general, but these are the best practice what I follow during my teaching assignments. So this slide gives general framework of machine learning scenario. So it starts with problem definition. So normally we start with the literature survey. From the literature survey, the problem, engineering problem to be solved will evolve. Then the first step in this framework is collection of data. So we collect data specific to the defined engineering problem, which has to be solved from various sources, like we may collect from papers, literature, we may collect from public domain, or we may collect from various sources and integrate. So that is the first step. What we are going to get is seed value of the data. That is not actual data. So if you get the most difficult samples of the domain as seed data, it is better. Then what we can do, we can use a simulator to generate a large volume of data from difficult samples already collected from various sources. That is one aspect. Or we may design an algorithm to generate data. So once we generate the data either way through simulator or through an algorithm, the generated data we call synthetic data. So synthetic data forms the reference for further processing. The further processing of the data involves dimensionality reduction. Dimensionality reduction is required. Whether it is required or not, we make a decision by seeing the model, how we are going to feed data to the model. Whether if the current data is two-dimensional in nature, and we transform two-dimensional data into its equivalent one dimension without losing the properties of the data. That one-dimensional data will go to neural network, say. One is transformation. Data preparation involves transformation of data, that is high-dimensional data, required dimension. It also involves cleaning of data. If there are redundant data items which needs to be eliminated, otherwise later on they will create bias problem. And if outliers are there which will not contribute during learning, which needs to be eliminated. So then comes feature engineering. Feature engineering is all about selection of distinct features from the extracted features. So distinct features are going to be the training set. That is the domain to be learned by the model. So here we conclude that raw data is transformed into a suitable form, that is training data set. That is what we call training data set. Then the third step is choice of the model. So this is very, very important because we have to take a right decision here, which model is going to be implemented for the current problem. People say that it will come through experience, but my own experience says that once we know the subject, machine learning subject, once we study the subject, and once we know the domain, then we can make a right decision. So domain is a training data set. For example, if target variables are given, class labels are given, so naturally the conclusion is, so it falls under supervised mode of learning. Then your subject knowledge tells that which are the models associated with supervised learning. And you are going to pick the right model. Or if the class labels are not given, then we pick right model from unsupervised mode of learning, that is clustering, and allow the model to learn the feature space so that class labels are going to be evaluated. And also whether it is regression, or in case of regression, whether it is linear regression or nonlinear regression, based on that we are going to decide the model. In case of classification, once again, so the nature of problem is whether it is linear or non-linear, based on that model is going to be decided. And also another parameter here is, fact is that model we are going to select also based on type of the data. Whether data is the categorical data or numeric data or real values. Based on that, we make the right choice. This is about the third step. So once we decide the model, then we train the model. We allow the model learn the domain. So here the objective is we allow the model to learn the domain, means that we minimize the error. So learning is an iterative process. So the error term has to be gradually reduced. Once error term reduces to zero or desired value, then we conclude that the model has learned the domain. Then we can pose question to the learned model to solve the problems. So learning is all about adjusting, in case of neural network, adjusting weight values, adjusting parameters. In case of neural networks, parameters are weight vectors. Then comes, we use learning model to fine tune weight vectors. So what will happen, it is a differential equation. We adjust the weights, we differentiate error term with reference to weights. We fine tune the weights so that error is going to be reduced gradually. Then the next step is tuning of hyperparameters by fixing the weights. By fixing the weights. In the previous step, once we conclude that the learning reached desired accuracy, that is error term is reached zero or some value, then learning algorithm terminates. Then we collect the weights. Then next aspect is we fine tune the hyperparameters of the system to build the architecture, our own architecture for the problem. So once to fix the hyperparameters, we follow the procedure called cross-validation. Then we evaluate the model and see whether it is meeting the desired accuracy, the desired performance or not. So then we make some predictions, give some test samples and observe the accuracy, whether it gives right judgment, whether it returns right class labels, whether it will take right actions. So for how many cases it will take right actions, right decisions, that is going to be the performance of the system. So this is the general framework. I would like to review this in the next slide. So data selection is already addressed. So in case of data preparation, foremost thing is, first and foremost thing is, it is mandatory to sample the training data, so that the bias is going to be eliminated. Shuffling means that the data items needs to be uniformly distributed in the sample space. For example, high temperature should not be at the one end, low temperature should not be at the another end. We need mix of all the training data items. That is because if all the high temperature samples are at one end, so that end we are going to pick as a for testing the system, then it is going to be biased. Only one case you have considered. The second aspect is normalization of the features. So normalize the features to ensure the uniformity. For example, the value, if it is big, you have to normalize that value, normalize using some log transformation. And balanced data set is only balanced data set contributes in the process of learning. Balanced data set means that data samples should be drawn from all the classes. Not that in some classes more data samples are drawn, from other classes very few data samples are drawn. It will lead to a problem while evaluating the system after learning. It is always better to visualize the data by plotting the curve using data science techniques. Once you plot the data, you will see whether there are outliers, and we can see the data points on the two-dimensional space. In case of outliers, if outliers are beneficial, then apply log transformation to bring them back to the mainstream. The next point is choice of the machine learning model I am reviewing. So which kind of model you are going to use, that is very important. Whether you are going to use simple model or complex model. So this depends upon the nature of the problem. But we consider some model, whether it is simple or complex, then we observe how it learns. So if simple model unable to learn properly, then gradually we increase the complexity, vice versa. Favor interpretability. We always recommend a simple equation rather than complex equation. For example, linear regression, simple equation. Back propagation learning model is a complex equation like that. So then comes important step, that is training of the model. So once again, training starts with reshuffling the data and divide data into two parts, say 80% training data and 20% test data. Then to then apply the cross-validation, k-fold cross-validation procedure to fine-tune hyperparameters. So here the procedure is you consider only training set and divide training set into training set like this. Suppose if you consider 80%, then in the first epoch, so you are going to have one part, some 20% out of 100, 70% is 100%, 10% validation data, remaining training data, like that. This is the arrangement, training data and validation data. Cross-validation is very important. The figure what I shown is 5-fold cross-validation to build the architecture. So once you apply cross-validation and build the architecture, then you can declare that you have your own system. You have developed your own system for the given problem. Otherwise, Earlier, you would have taken some reference model from some paper and implemented that model. After cross-validation, you are fine-tuning a hyperparameter which suits to your requirement so that your own architecture is going to be evolved. So then train all the samples. Then initially you have dedicated some test samples and use those test samples to observe the performance of your own architecture. Then if the architecture what you developed, you are going to observe whether it is up to mark or not, whether it is meeting standard with reference to contemporary research work or not. So if not, so you'll have to see there are some issues in the architecture which needs to be addressed. So issues are like you have to, if data is less, you have to increase the data. That is one of the issues. So if you have to use a diagnostics tool here to assess whether it is overfitting or underfitting. If it is underfitting, then you have to gradually increase the complexity of the model. If it is overfitting, then you have to reduce the complexity of the model. Other aspect is you can switch over to another model. That is also another aspect. Suppose if it is a categorical data, naive-based model and decision tree, both are okay, then you may change the model. That is your choice. And other issue for the less performance may be features. So training set may not have influential or distinct features, right features. So right features are very important. They influence overall performance of the system. Then validate the model, build the architecture, your own system, train, test and verify the performance and see whether it is meeting the standards. So this slide shows validation.
Sir, due to shortage of time, I would request you to conclude, sir.
I will come to assessment. So in our case, we use this procedure for evaluation of this particular subject. We give equal weightage for in-semester and end-semester. In case of in-semester, it is almost a formative assessment. We give assignments and mini projects, and we give freedom to the students whether they can opt assignments or mini projects. Naturally, those who want to go abroad for higher studies, they want to publish papers, they opt mini projects. And we have domain experts in KMC, medical domain, finance domain, in TAPME and agriculture domain. We expose our students to domain experts, and they use Google Colab to verify the concepts, prototype models. So then 2 sessionals, 30% marks. And end semester we conduct for another 50 marks. The compulsory 5 compulsory questions will be given, which involves only problems and designs. So with this, I would like to conclude my presentation. Once again, I would like to thank the organizers of this faculty development program. Thank you, Vananda.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your thought-provoking ideas on teaching, learning, and assessment related to machine learning course. Also, we are grateful to you for touching upon important aspects of machine learning like best practices in ML, different types of ML, subsequently highlighting some of the core issues associated in building an ML model. Thank you, sir. Moving forward, data mining or knowledge discovery is a process of finding previously unknown and potentially interesting patterns and relations in large databases. Data mining is the emerging science and industry of applying modern statistical techniques and computational technologies to the problem of finding useful patterns hidden within a large databases. Now I request our beloved HOD, Dr. Vijayendra Singh sir, to enlighten us with his experience in teaching, learning and assessment at IIIT Allahabad, taking the a few interesting aspects of data mining course. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Javed. And first of all, I thank to the organizing team who has actually invited me for this panel discussion, along with my co-panelist, Professor Subba Reddy, as well as Professor Anami. So it is a pleasure for me to attend this whole FDP session. And I also like to thank our Honorable Director, Professor P. Nagbhushan, and the Vice Chancellor of VTU, Professor Kari Siddhappa sir. So thank you all. So after the presentation by two senior professors, it is very difficult for me to speak anything because they have covered many more things. So what I divided my presentation into two parts. So first part, the best practices which we are following here in IIIT Allahabad, because this is the FDP related to teaching, learning and assessment. And second part, I will touch upon the data mining thing and the research orientation, and then the teaching, learning and evaluation or assessment part through the research projects and research ideas. So let me start with the this choice and credit link continuous assessment and award ordinance of IIIT Allahabad. And I would like to compare this with the National Education Policy 2020, which Government of India has recently announced. And you will be able to see that whatever the Government of India has announced is already there, which we are practicing here in IIIT Allahabad. So special credits goes to Professor P. Nagbhushan, our director at IIIT Allahabad. So 3 years back, he joined our institution with a vision of this choice and credit link continuous assessment system. So then he explained to us, and then he helped us in developing this choice and credit link continuous assessment system. So I will brief about what this system is. So I have taken only highlights of this ordinance. So you can actually go through our website and you can find out the greater details later. So what is this continuous assessment system? So this is our institute commitment toward the need of a continuous assessment, which enables a student to maintain the continuity in the learning process and also eases them of the anxiety that unnecessarily peaks up during the traditional examinations. You see, there are lots of students, they are under depression because of examination, they do suicide. So there are many societal problems existing in these students, which we are trying to help them. So it also facilitates the honorable exit option if the student fails to complete the requirement to earn the degree within the stipulated period. So that is the key highlight of this continuous assessment and choice and credit link based assessment system. So what is the mode of content delivery? So there are many colleagues of our institute, they have already talked about it. So we divide it into three parts. One is the lecture component, second one is the tutorial, and third one is the practice. So lecture is mostly in one-way type, like the faculty will teach to the audience, to the students. And then this tutorial refers to the sessions consisting of participatory discussion, self-study, desk work, brief presentation by students, along with such other novel methods that enable a student to efficiently and effectively absorb and assimilate the contents delivered in the lecture session. So whatever the student will undergo in the lecture session, he will try to discuss among themselves, then they will present, there may be any particular task which the instructor can give to them. So it is a controlled environment where the student can interact with among themselves, and then they can come up with the solution. And then the third one is the practice session. So the tutorial session is the controlled session, but this practice session is the free session. So where the student will be able to apply the knowledge into different domains and then try to solve maybe the field studies, the case studies, maybe some projects on some hands-on experience, maybe the new domain where he can apply the technique which he or she has learned in the lecture. So this is the three component of the content delivery. So what is continuous assessment? So whatever a student is doing in the institution or during the academic period will be assessed by the instructor. So all academic activities undertaken by the student during the currency of the said academic semester, such as conduct of reviews tests, quizzes, tutorials, assignments, practicals, surprise test, project work, term work, team work, seminars, discussions, and many more. So even a student is not doing what he is doing or what the instructor is assessing, so everything, whatever he is doing during his academic activity will be assessed. Since we have to assign some grades, and because he has to go participate in other competitions and other places. So we have to provide some type of relative grading for that. So that's why what we have done, we have integrated all these, and we are actually cumulative performance in a specific period we are noting. So we have divided the whole semester into 3 parts. One is the C1 component, and then the C2 component, then the C3 component. The C1 period is actually from the 1st to 8th week. So whatever academic activity is there during this period will be integrated with this C1 period, and the student will be assessed. So you see that this from 1st to 16th week, we are doing the formative assessment. So whatever the learning is there in the student during the classes, tutorials, he is able to apply in the practicals. So this formative assessment is there. So there are 3 rounds of iteration. Like iteration, Professor Subba Reddy has just touched, that there are 3 rounds of iteration, then learning happens. So first iteration during the classroom lecture session, second iteration during the tutorial, and third iteration where the student is having all the freedom to apply in any domain. So there are 3 iterations, and then he can apply to new domain, new problems he can solve. Then the C3 period, which is having from 16 to 18 week, we assess overall whatever is there in the course, we assess the particular student. So we can actually divide into sub-components of these periods. There can be n components in all these respective periods. Then because we have to accumulate at the end of the semester, so we are giving weightage of around 30% to both C1 and C2, and then 40% to the C3 period, because C3 component actually comprises of whatever is there in that particular course. About the projects, because this is the part where most of the engineering students lacks. They copy the projects, they don't do anything during the semester, at the end they present something. So we are facing many problems that students are not serious about the project which they undergo in their undergraduate studies or maybe the postgraduate studies. So projects we also treat as a special course. So we all again divide it into 3 parts, like C1 refers to assessment on a problem identification and definition, literature survey, defending the methodology to be adopted for the project. So if some project is there, some semester is there, so in the C1 component, the student and the supervisor both will be clear what exactly the student is going to do in this particular semester. Then C2 will definitely refer to the assessment on the conduction of the experiment, software designing, developing, implementing, maybe mobile app development, together with the preparation of a draft report, including result and discussion. Then the C3 component refers to the assessment in 2 parts based on final presentation, demonstration, or we can divide it into several small parts as well. So we have the instructor has all the flexibility for the student assessment. Now there are 2 things. One is the drop in the course, and second one is the course drop. So drop in a course, if the student is not able to perform well, then the particular student will be dropped in a particular course. So for example, if C1 plus C2 is less than 30%, if C3 alone is less than 30%, even after availing the makeup option, or if the student fails to secure a grade point of less than 4.0 in the overall assessment. So our director sir has, in his presentation, he has covered this. Like if some slow learner is there, then he should be given chance to complete the course with good grades also. So this is a facility for slow learner. That is the second part of this, that is the course drop. So even a student may volunteer to choose a drop in 1 or more courses to match his speed of learning. So slow learner, because he has to devote more time in the learning, and what happens in the traditional cases, we restrict the student that you have to complete this course in the particular semester. Otherwise you will be failed. Suppose some student is there, he is very good in many subjects, but in one subject he is not able to do that. Suppose data structure course is there, some student is not able to complete that. Another course is there, he is not able to complete that within that stipulated period. Then he should be given some chance so that he can undergo the whole part of that particular course and complete that course with full satisfaction. So a drop in a course would require to complete repeat in the course in the next semester, or a summer semester, or the spillover semester. The spillover semester is the duration, that is the normal tenure, and then the additional time we give for completing a particular student to complete a particular course. So this is actually a facility of course drop to the student which is a slow learner. This attendance is again very important. Many students, they are not serious regarding their attendance, and many institutions are facing the problem of attendance. Students are not attending the classes. So here what we do in IIIT Allahabad, students are not forced for attendance. We never ask a student to attend the classes, but they themselves participate in all academic activities in order to successfully pass a course. So this system, the CCLCA, automatically takes care of it. So that is the most important feature of this particular choice and credit link based system, which is there in our institution, IIIT Allahabad. So what are these credit based certification schemes? So if some student is there and there is a prescribed number of credit courses which he has to complete in order to get a particular degree, suppose he is not able to complete that number of credits, then in the ancient time or in the other institution, what happens? He will not be given any certification or the degree. But what we do here, if some student due to some reason, if he is not able to complete all the prescribed credits, in that case, we also give that student an honorable exit option. So if successfully completes all the courses within the stipulated time frame, will get the degree, else he will get the certification of whatever number of credits he has earned in that particular program. So there are some add-on credits and certification. We also offer some add-on courses also. So suppose this 160 credits are required for completing a BTech IT course from IIIT Allahabad. So we suggest a student to acquire additional 16 credits. So if all additional 16 credits from the same department he is getting, then in that case he will get the degree with honors with the specialization in suppose machine learning, or with the specialization in suppose data mining, or with the specialization in suppose signal processing. If the 16 add-on credits are earned from other department, like we have electronics department, we have applied science department, we have management department, so you'll get a degree with honors with minor in suppose electronics. Add-on diploma shall be awarded if the 16 add-on credits are earned from an assortment of departments. So he can actually pick and choose many courses from all other departments. So all these things you will see that they are there in the National Education Policy 2020. So if less than 16 add-on credits are earned, add-on certification for X number of credits will be given to the students. So this is just highlights. So here I will discuss 2-3 concepts. One is the karma. So karma is knowledge acquisition, retention, management, assimilation, and applications. So my PhD mentor, Professor Prem Kumar Kala, he is a retired professor from Electrical Engineering Department of IIT Kanpur and presently director of the Albag Education Institute. So he has coined this term when we were doing many projects together. And then there is a concept of human intelligence. So human intelligence can be defined as a general mental ability for reasoning, decision making, problem solving, learning, and retaining information. Intelligence combines cognitive functions like perception, attention, memory, planning, and language. So you see there is a similarity between this karma and knowledge and the human intelligence. And whatever we are doing here under this CCLCA ordinance, we are actually giving the opportunity to the student for attention, memory, planning or management, and the communication. So actually we are implementing this karma, and that is leading towards the intelligence, because if there is a learning, definitely that will be converted into intelligence, and that is the human intelligence. So we are focusing on the human intelligence rather than the traditional things which is being practiced everywhere. So that is all the things are there in this national education policy. So government will definitely ask all the institutions to follow that, and we are the role model with the blessings of our director, Professor P. Nagbhushan. So thanks to our director, sir. So this is one advertisement slide now, because this data mining has been given to me for this particular FDP. So this is my laboratory, deep learning laboratory, which I have established here in IIIT Allahabad. So we do many things in this laboratory. I will not take much time. These are some of the data mining techniques, because data mining is a course which everybody knows. Every student knows data mining. Every student used to do project in data mining irrespective of the field. So some topics are there like statistics, clustering, visualization, decision tree, association, artificial neural networks, classifications. So why I have made this slide? So that you can ask questions. What are the tasks which we can do? We can do classification, clustering, functional approximation, pattern recognition, time series analysis. So we have some data set and we want to get some useful information. For getting that useful information, we can use many things. And then after getting that information, what can we do with that information? We can use it for future work, for solving problems, for future predictions. This is a major part of this data pre-processing under data mining. which Professor Subba Reddy has already touched. That is the data standardization, denoising, filling missing values, dimensionality reduction, volume reduction, feature reduction. So this is the opportunity, because in the classroom we also tell the student, we give hints that you can ask question in these fields. So you see, this is one simulator which we made for Bhabha Atomic Research Center. This is a general purpose neural network software which comprises of all the supervised learning algorithm as well as unsupervised learning algorithm, then data pre-processing including principal component and the independent component analysis. So you see what happens if you do something and if you visualize something whenever you are teaching to the students. You see there is a third quadrant where there is a fuzzy C-mean clustering plot. So there are 4 clusters, C1, C2, C3 and C4. But if you see there is one point above all, around 400 values in the y-axis, that is not belonging to any of the cluster. So if you are visualizing the thing, then a student can better understand that that is a point which is having some specific information in it. Maybe it is an outlier or maybe it is a noise. So a student can then further work on that. So just one slide on this. There is a second example I will take, because these are some research ideas which I will try to discuss, so that a student, probably if you will take some research examples in your classroom, then a student will be more motivated, and then he or she will better understand the topic and then apply for the real life application. Because in engineering institution, engineering student, he should be able to acquire knowledge, retain knowledge, and then he should be able to apply knowledge for the society for solving real life problems. So I think that this type of thing should be there in the classroom also. So this is a project which we did for TVS Motor Company, Hosur, where the operators were used to test the engine. So they were listening the sound of the engine, then they were telling whether this engine is good or not good. And then if it is good, then only it will integrate with the overall bike. So what we did, we have actually used some sensors, microphones in order to capture the acoustic signal. Then we have used some data acquisition card for converting from analog to digital signals. Then we developed our own machine learning algorithms in order to categorize them into good class or bad class. And if it is a bad class, then what is the type of possible fault in that particular engine. And what we did for them, we have actually predicted 2 classes, like one is a good class, second one was very good class, which even TVS Motor Company was not knowing. And then they realized later on, and then they told that many users, they are actually informing them that they are getting better mileage, whatever they have never observed in their industry. So initially they were using this time of 5 minutes for testing a single cylinder. And then this time they were not able to actually complete the demand, and they were not able to provide the supply as per the demand. So we have reduced this time of testing of the engine within 1.27 minutes out of 5 minutes. So only testing time is 27 seconds, but this 1 minute is required for putting the engine on the test rig and then removing that. So if you see, I have given example of machine learning, or have I given example of data mining. So whenever there is a data, if we are mining that, then it is a data mining. Irrespective of the approaches, we can use machine learning approach, we can use signal processing approach, we can use statistical approach in order to mine that particular data. This is a second example I will take. So in this particular project, this we did for Panna National Park. So NSF USA and the mighty government of India has funded this project. Then IISc Bangalore, then Panna National Park. So they were our partners. Then from abroad, EPFL was there. Then Ohio State University was there. Cornell University was there. So there are many participants in this. And there are many MTech and PhD students. They have participated in this particular project and they have completed their master's and PhD. So what is this project about? So this is a forest scenario. So I think in the classroom, we should teach like this. Like we should talk about the problem. We should talk about the possible solution. Then in the tutorial section, we can do a little bit of experimentation. And then in the practice session, we can allow a student to give full freedom to apply it into different approaches, to apply on the different data sets in order to understand the overall concept. So this project was for deploying sensor in order to monitor a particular forest to safeguard the wildlife. Because what happened, there are some villages, so poachers used to come from villages, they used to kill the animals, and then it was very difficult to monitor and protect especially the tiger in the Panna National Park that is there in Madhya Pradesh. So what we did, we have deployed many emotes that they are the wireless sensors. So they are continuously monitoring, and the distance we have taken around 200 meters each, and then we have deployed it into 3x3 kilometer areas, because we have actually, there is a one pond, so we have actually acquired that area, and then we have deployed our sensors. And these sensors, we have also put our small algorithm in the TinyOS, that they should be able to detect whether there is a gunshot or not, because poachers used to kill the animal using the gunshots. If there is a gunshot, then immediately the sensor will detect. If it is a gunshot, then it will transmit the signal from that particular sensor to the guard station. We also developed one virtual fencing technology for this Panna National Park based on fiber optic cable, and we deployed it throughout that area. So if some poacher is crossing that particular border, then immediately this will sense, and this will inform the guard station that some person has crossed that boundary. Or suppose if some animal are moving from the forest to the villages, then immediately it will tell that the animals are going from the forest to the villages, because they also kill the humans. It is the mutual thing. So if the animals are crossing the border, then it will also tell that it is a signal of elephant, it is a signal of tiger, it is signal of leopard. So there are many number of classes which we did for them. So what is there? So we have assigned the problem, we have discussed the problem, we told that there will be classification problem, there will be identification problem. Then in the tutorial section, we can discuss like how to solve this problem using 1 or 2 algorithm. And then in the practice session, the student is having all the freedom in order to apply using different number of techniques to collect more number of samples in order to solve the problem. So this is just one example I have taken. So I will not take much of the time. So thank you so much. Within this brief time, I just touched upon something. So now floor is open for the questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for bombarding us with a lot of information. So you have really presented very well, sir. So I formally thank you for sharing your wonderful thoughts regarding our CCLC ordinance. According to me, the ordinance has given very much flexibility, not only to the teachers to customize their teaching, learning and assessment, but also to the students who go to the extent of saying our HOD that I will study only this and this subject. So that is a flexibility the student are getting now. Sir, you have touched upon data mining, data analytic aspects with discussion on how to involve students in live projects. We are very thankful to you, sir. So let us now begin with the much awaited panel discussion by posing some interesting questions. Sir, I would like to
please remove the screen. Please stop sharing the screen.
Sorry.
My first question to Professor Anami, sir, is that so one of the participants has asked the question: how can we solve problems from subjects like discrete mathematics online? Continuation: how can we evaluate the students through online tests for subjects like discrete mathematics?
See, to teach subjects like discrete mathematics, there are many online platforms are available. You can use those online platforms to teach the discrete mathematics in a more meaningful way. To give one example, we have something called math calculator. Math calculator can be used not only for discrete mathematics, it can be used in general for teaching mathematics, and the students can enjoy mathematics class with the math calculator download or using the math calculator.
Yes, sir. In continuation to the same question, sir, there is another question. Can online math teaching be more effective than conventional teaching methods?
See, in fact, we have been used to chalk and talk. Okay. Now,
Yes,
switching over to this new paradigm of teaching obviously takes little time. But once we are used to this online teaching, I think this is more better than our chalk and talk method of teaching.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, one more question related to mathematics itself. How to teach maths for ML courses at UG level, sir? For Anami, sir.
Yeah. You can teach by taking. Many people talked about how to teach ML. because we should have a prerequisite first be imbibed into the students. Once a prerequisite like vectors and our statistics related aspects of mathematics, then it is very easy for us to introduce machine learning concepts into the minds of the students.
I would ask the same question, how to teach mathematics for ML courses to Professor Subba Reddy, sir. Sir, kindly share your thoughts.
Yes, some of the aspects of mathematics are prerequisite for machine learning. First, we discuss them and then further continue machine learning topics. For example, linear algebra, calculus, probability, statistics, statistical models. We have in machine learning a set of statistical classifiers. So where we use probability theory. And yesterday, professors mentioning about eigenvalues, eigenvectors, we use in principal component analysis. And calculus is used in correcting the slope in linear discriminant function in support vector machines and etc. So basics we teach and then continue.
Yes. Sir, there is one more question. How do we handle corrupt or missing data in AI or ML? So that has been asked by one of the participants.
Yeah, first is first you identify the correct data items. That is very important. First we identify the columns where the data items are missing, for which we use either Python or R. They identify the columns where then, so we can use say statistical evaluation and find the mean of the column, and that mean value is going to be filled. This is one aspect. And also we use discriminant analysis function to fix the missing value.
Yes, sir, there is one more very interesting question asked by one of the participants in this FDP. Is there any tool for gamification in education, sir? So can you put some light on this, sir?
Yeah, we have Kahoot. One tool is there. It is a Kahoot, K-A-H-O-O-T. It's for online learner engagement.
Okay, sir. Kahoot. Okay, sir.
Yeah, Kahoot, online learner. It is a gaming tool. So a lot of cues can be given to engage them, and a lot of formative questions can be assigned to them just to assess whether they are learning or not. And also it is useful to know whether learning is effective, taking some feedback on learning and teaching. So that's it.
Thank you, sir. To Dr. Vijayendra Singh, sir.
Sir.
The participants have asked a question. What are the parameters of evaluation in online teaching and how to avoid plagiarism?
Okay. So actually in online learning, there are two important factors. One is the content. Second one is the delivery, which we are observing here. So if you see, there are many video lectures available even in NPTEL. There are many MOOC courses. There are many international courses. They offer the video lectures. But whatever is there, they are actually really very good. But if you have to deliver those lectures in online mode, then in these areas, and then in this scenario of suppose some student is from a village, so they are not having that data pack as well as the data connectivity. So it becomes very difficult for those students to get the content from that video and then to analyze that and to understand that. So I will focus, I will say that there are two parts. One is the content. Content should be very much focused, very much compressed, but should have coverage for the overall thing which you want to communicate. Second one is the delivery, because internet definitely actually affects this delivery part, but your delivery should be very much interactive, and this interactiveness or involvement of the student will give you two options. One is the learning as well as the assessment also. So even the student is not knowing about the assessment, but you are assessing that student also during the interaction. Yes. And the most important parameter is this student satisfaction. So in both ways, whatever he's doing, whatever his feedback he's submitting, then you can evaluate. Or second part is whatever he has learned, that also give you the experience that whatever is his performance will give you the level that student has learned or not learned. So student feedback is definitely there.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, one more live question from Professor D.S. Guru, sir. He has asked Professor Anami, sir, that very essential topic that you are touched upon. I noticed that you also wrote a book on discrete mathematics. Generally, our teachers do not consider courses on maths very seriously. May I know what measures you have initiated in your institute to motivate people to study math-related courses? To what extent your books inspire readers? So quickly, sir, can you?
Okay. Thank you, Guru sir. In fact, I have written a book because I was very much interested in mathematics. That is the motivation because of IIT Chennai. And later on, what happened is I make here my teachers to teach at least one mathematics course, okay, in their initial 3 to 4 years of their service. Maybe discrete mathematics, maybe graph theory, maybe analysis of algorithm. That's how they develop the affinity towards mathematics. Without mathematics, nothing can be achieved.
Thank you very much, sir, for your. So we'll have the last question for this session to Professor Anami, sir. I know you are a person of great humor, sir. I have personally enjoyed your company in many places, in many conferences in IIT Jodhpur we met, and also at IIIT Allahabad. We had been to Ayodhya together. So I want to I want to ask you that what is the role of humor in teaching and keeping students engaged in the class?
See, humor is required to keep students engaged in the class. And many times the humor should be pertaining to the subject that I teach. For example, one of my teacher by name Lakshmanan, I don't know where the professor is, he used to teach me. He gave an example of A inverse A complement, its complement is A. Okay, he is narrated on a small story. I quickly tell that there was a guru and he had many disciples. And the disciples, once the guru asked disciples to get some oil, edible oil from the market, and he gave a small bucket. And he asked them to collect 2.5 liters of oil from the market. They took the bucket to the market and asked the vendor to pour 2.5 liters, but they couldn't accommodate entire 2.5 liters. Therefore, vendor asked, where should I put the remaining half liter? They tilted down, there was a small portion in the bucket. They asked him to put half liter. And afterwards, they brought it very carefully back to the guru, and guru asked them, I had asked you to bring 2.5 liters of oil. Where is another 2 liters of oil? They said, sir, it was here.
Yes,
the bucket A complement, its complement is equal to A.
Sir. Thank you very much, sir. Same question I would like to ask Professor Subbareddy, sir.
Yeah, definitely it is a good idea. Actually, it reduces anxiety in the class. One can break the monotony and increases learnability.
Yes, sir.
So it is good to have humor.
Thank you, sir.
Specific to the subject. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Same question I would like to ask because our HOD, sir, is most smiling person in IIIT Allahabad campus. So, so I am asking what is his secret and whether he is carrying the same thing in the class also. So, can you, to engage the students, sir, can you put some light on this?
Yes, sir, definitely, sir. And I want to take 1 or 2 minutes because there are a couple of questions in the chat box. So, I will quickly address them. Just in 1 or 2 seconds.
Sir, 1 minute, sir. You have only 1 minute, sir.
Okay, 1 minute. So there is some Pooja. She has asked that should we take 60% data set for training and then remaining for testing, which most of the researchers are doing. So what is our recommendation is don't go for these numbers. Always take very less number of training data set as small as possible. Maybe the 10% or 20% or 5%. If you are able to successfully model your problem, how will you evaluate that model? Because for the rest of the data set, you are getting very good result. Then you can say that your model is validated. So don't go for this number. This is just hint. Then second question is, in case of multimedia data content, Dr. Prakash has asked, in case of multimedia data content, how does on proceed for data mining? So first describe your data and describe your problem, because problem, once you are describing it completely, you have actually solved half of that problem. So multimedia data set, suppose you are working with the fake news these days, that is a very common problem which people are addressing. So you can work with that, and then you have to actually write down what exactly you want to do with that multimedia data, because multimedia data, most of them are in the unstructured format. Then you can proceed for, as per your objective, what exactly you are going to do in that. Then you can pick certain set of algorithm which is already there. Then you can do this data mining.
Yes.
Third one, some question is there, while identifying the animals enter to the village, we will do face segmentation problem. So in this technology, what we have done is not related to the face, because we are not using camera. Otherwise, poacher will also bring the camera with themselves. So that's why it is like the CCLCA system here. Their student does not know whether he is being assessed by the instructor. So same thing we have implemented there. Even nobody knows something is there who will actually identify whether there is a person, whether there is animal.
Thank
So
you,
this
sir.
is
Thank you, sir. Sorry to interrupt you because shortage of time. The conclusion from this panel discussion are as follows. The first takeaway is that strong foundation in mathematics will help us to go a long way, making us capable in discovering many hidden things and imbibe innovative culture through critical thinking. So that is the first takeaway. Second takeaway is, apart from classroom activities, so as Dr. Vijender Singh has rightly pointed out, exposure to live research projects, trending R&D projects will drive students towards more critical thinking and lifelong learning. So that was the whole purpose of this entire workshop. And I wholeheartedly thank my three distinguished panel experts, Professor Anami, Professor Subba Reddy sir, Dr. Vijender Singh, for sparing their valuable time to share their experiences in this panel discussion. Also thanks to all the participants for making this session interactive by asking so many interesting questions. Last but not the least, I thank the FTP organizers for giving me the opportunity to steer this panel discussion as a panel coordinator. Thank you one and all. Over to Dr. Shambhu Lingappa sir.